Alright, guys, are you ready? What does everyone think? Actually, I should just do it like this. What's everyone's feelings? I told you I looked very honest. That you? I'd be upset if you were my child, Fails. So, what happened was that my lovely girlfriend, love of my life, Magitech, she made some hot chocolate, and I was drinking it, and I got on my mustache, and I was like, fuck it. I'm tired of this mustache.
That's not what happened. Oh.
Yeah, it is.
You shave your mustache too short. And then you're like, oh.
I didn't really shave my mustache too short.
You did.
It wasn't the classic, like, sometimes I take my razor, and I put it, like, on the highest settings, and I'll shave everything. And then to use the little buzzer, I have to put the setting all the way down.
If I knew hot chocolate was going to do that, I would have been making hot chocolate.
Put the buzzer on, and then I'll go back to cutting my beard with the main part, but I won't set it to the highest setting again, and I'll just be like, and then I'll be like, well, I guess I gotta shave everything. So yeah, no, food was getting stuck in here, it was getting in the way of my hot chocolate. I cut it pretty short, and I was like, you know what, why don't I just do the whole thing? But the nice part is, mustache doesn't get away in any of my food or drinking now. So I'm quite pleased like this. But I digress. Is there a way to make this? No, I have to like. Oh, it's because it's... I know why. Wait, we'll just do this. Does this work? I gotta be way over there. Fuck. God damn, that's annoying. I hate cameras. They're so confusing. How do they work? Magnets? So I'm just gonna be over here. I guess I'll talk like this. In all seriousness, it's fine, just different. Thank you, Luna. Thank you. So for those that are joining us and have no idea what the fuck's going on, I write blogs because people are wrong, and I have to tell them they're wrong, but in a long-winded way that they'll never know because they don't want to read that much. So, Potato, don't worry about what happened to me, alright? I look like a suburban Wolverine. Interesting. Yes, I wanted hot chocolate. Moral of the story, I wanted hot chocolate. So, this post is more on the generic gaming and the trends of gaming, and it really does set up, if anyone read my first blog post about how I see Overwatch and why it's designed the way it is, this is kind of what led up to basically why gaming is where it's at right now. So we'll just go, and I just call it On the Trend of Gaming. It's not too long. Maybe it's longer than I think it is. But a lot of people said it was decent of a post, and they enjoyed it. And I talked to my one buddy. He's like, "Oh yeah, there's some posts that there's some points that you talked about that I thought I enjoyed. So we're all going to enjoy it together." So, On the Trend of Gaming, January 15th, 2021. So I've had a skeleton of this post written for a while. Never got the chance to finish it. This is true. I have like 15 drafts that I need to get through of so much shit. What inspired me to finalize it was this podcast by Artosis. And for anyone that doesn't know who Artosis is, he is one of the biggest he is the biggest StarCraft 2 caster besides his partner, Tasteless. For those that don't know, they're the best esports commentary ever. Unparalleled. There's nothing even close to them. Also, they've been esport commentators for like 20 years. Like, this is just what they did. Back in Justin TV days, yeah. And even before that, like, they did Brood War casting. So they are pretty big characters or people in the RTS genre. In fact, they know a lot of people at Blizzard, and Frost Giant, the new RTS game maker that composed of a lot of old players or old developers from Blizzard, they actually know these people one-on-one. In fact, I believe Tasteless's mom is on the Frost Giant team. I think she does PR. But yeah, so they're in the know about all these RTS changes, and their insight's pretty good. But of course, it can be always brash. I basically say this: Artosis is half the greatest esport commentator duo out there. There's a lot of talk about what to do with the RTS genre, specifically because so many devs, designers, and managers split off from Blizzard to form Frost Giant Studios to make the next generation of RTS gaming. I'm specifically calling out RTS gaming right now because of all of the old genres, RTS gaming is the one that stayed true to it the most. Basically, it's constantly, it's almost always 1v1. It's always high stress, high impact. It's very tough of a genre to get into. It's always been on the lower of the popularity side, but people keep making games for it because it's just, I don't know, there's just this desire to play those games. But it's a really good example of how do you take an old design into the future. More can be found at this podcast with the Frost Giant team. So if anyone wants to actually listen to Artosis talk to the developers of this new forthcoming RPG, or not RPG, RTS, this podcast is literally him just grilling them, and he's really competitive oriented. So he's like, how does this work? How is this going to work? How is this going to work? It's a good look over if you want to give it a listen. In the first video, Artosis said a couple of reasons why he believes other games are more popular, and one of the reasons was it's easier. This threw another commentator into a small fit, and while I agree with Artosis, there are better ways to put it. I'm going to expand on why the latest games are trending towards casual, team-based play, and the primary reasons behind it. Note about this post, I know all of the ideas I'm covering can be expanded on and talked about in depth. They're all worth their own post, but I'm trying to fit this blog post in not a giant 20-page paper. This post will focus more on game design and motivation, not any meta topics to motivate gamers like cosmetics or microtransactions. So when people talk about new games, they're just like, all right, is it a gaming as a service? Is it going to have microtransaction? How is progress, hindered? Yada, yada, yada. I don't care about any of that shit. I am just doing motivation and game design on this one. So the first step to understanding where gaming is at, we have to look at why we play games. Let's briefly look at motivation for gaming. If anyone hasn't seen this, this is a really good read, a really good thing. It goes into why people play games and how this company kind of divided them up, and they do analysis on it, and it really is good data for gaming. This is a study on motivation for gaming that was done at, I always want to say Games Done Quickly, but that's not a Q. Game developer, the game designer, god damn it, what is it? Game developer, essentially, convention. In 2019, it breaks player motivations up into 6 categories, each having 2 subcategories. So we can kind of just quickly look at this. Action. In actions, destruction, excitement. Social, competition, community. Mastery, challenge, strategy. Achievement has completion and power. Immersion has fantasy and story. And creativity has design and discovery. Game Dev Conference. There we go. Thanks, Potato. It breaks players' motivations, each having 2. You'll notice that most of these concepts are not tied to any one specific genre of gaming, right? It's not like action, FPS, right? It's just, it's generic. Like, this is what motivates people. I specifically want to focus on that this is what most gamers find fun, and that most of these categories are non-competitive. Competitive play can only fit into 2 subcategories at best, those being competitiveness and challenge. There are 2 reasons why I focus on competitive play as a motivation. Firstly, Competitive play is the single largest factor that can keep a game active far past updates on content creation. If anyone watched this past weekend, there was an Age of Empires 2 tournament. How many viewers did it pull? Like 20,000. And previous ones have pulled 40 or 50,000. The competitive community in a game that's from the 90s is still making it popular. Warcraft 3, somewhat popular. StarCraft Brood War, still the best esport, still immensely popular with some of the biggest winnings in gaming. So you can't ignore the competitive community because it's what's going to make it last the longest. The second reason is that players won't play and get skilled at a game they don't find fun. Enjoyment is our primary motivation when playing a game. Competitive by nature is difficult, and very few players pick up a game simply because it is difficult. If we want to follow the trend of gaming, we're going to have to face the facts. Trends in the market appear because they sell, and companies are not going to frequently attempt to market to such small demographics as challenging, insert genre here. So, when someone makes a game, they're not just going to be like, this is a tough RTS. Only the best players can play this game. And everyone's going to be like, let's play it! No, it's going to be like a handful of players, and that's it. So challenge can't be like your primary reason going into the market. Sometimes you can. Games that are specifically challenging on purpose. Darkest Dungeon. RimWorld, more like Dwarf Fortress. Cupheads. Yeah, so there are these specifically challenging games that are having like a really cool impact. But if you actually look at more than just the challenge, there's usually more than just the challenge. Cuphead is like this amazing retro art design, and don't get me wrong, as a platform and all that, it's really, really cool. But all of those things, plus the challenge, is what makes the game. Trust me, if someone just had a shitty game that was challenging like that, no one would play it. RimWorld and Dwarf Fortress are kind of the same way. Darkest Dungeon as well. But Darkest Dungeon, like it's kind of targeting those D&D players that want like a challenging game that's supposed to be difficult and hard. Indie developers would definitely target that, but I don't see AAA titles ever targeting that because there's just too much money into it and the market's way too small. And we're trying to find the big trends on why people are playing games right now. So while fun can help sales and competitive can help its longevity, there's one part of gaming that can help both: modding. Modding allows for a player base to create their own content and modify the game as they see fit. Some mods can become as popular or more than the base game they're built on. The best example of this would be the MOBA genre and the rise of Dota from Warcraft 3. While Blizzard missed a chance with this game mode, it does show how a significant amount of players enjoyed a specific aspect of Warcraft 3. This is immeasurable data for game designers, as it shows what you can do with the genre and how popular it can be. It helps us distill a genre and see it for its individual parts. In the above example, it showed how much players enjoyed controlling a single hero, while the AI literally throws units at each other. So, this is how genres evolve over time, is actually modding. Or someone develops a game majorly based on like another game, but they just take a single aspect of it. This is what MOBAs are. They clearly come from an RTS, but they rose from a RTS custom game where people are like, I can't handle an army. What if I give you one hero with abilities? Oh, I can do that. That sounds fun. And then they kind of split off from there. Modding is a great way to see how gaming is developed in the most natural way, through a type of evolution. The unpopular mods slowly lose support and die off, while the popular ones stay on top and keep advancing. In the past, a lot of these mods have become fully fledged games or were used as inspiration. The best examples of mods that have become standalone games would be Counter-Strike, Dota, and anything survival-based, and anything in the survival builder genre or battle royale genre. The best way to understand these developments is to walk backwards from where the current popular games came from. Blizzard and other companies often hide the player-based population, but we can see some activity through Steam and streaming websites. The most popular games based on streaming sites and Steam are team-based and social, remember motivation, games such as Dota, League, CSGO, Apex, and Fortnite. And I specifically say remember motivation because remember, I'm already here. Social is competition and community. Um, so these games are highly competitive, which means they're highly social. So let's try to walk these games back from where they're from originally. League of Legends came about after Dota's popularity, and as discussed before, Dota was originally a Warcraft 3 mod. Technically, we trace it back one more step to StarCraft Brood War mod called Aeon of Strife. It's very clear to see that MOBA came directly from the RTS genre. The biggest difference from Dota and its original RTS foundations: no army to micro, no base to macro, teammates. Teammates have been added, and abilities have moved some of the mechanical skill to decision making. So this is quote unquote making gaming easier, but it's just making it simpler. People didn't want to focus on the micro of a whole army or the macro of an entire base. They just, for better or worse, they don't give two shits about all of this complex and yes, difficult part of the game. They just want the fun part, right? Which is fine. Mods essentially created this, and the mod became a real game, and that's what people love now. They're like, yeah, this is how you're supposed to play a game. Just fuck everything else, give me one thing that I focus on, and I do really good at it with the team, and that's fun. That's funner than having a whole base and me having to focus on 20 different things. I don't want to do this because, one, we'll get into it later, but, like, stress. People don't want a stressful game. And that's a primary thing later on. But the next genre we can trace back would be any popular battle royale. Fortnite, PUBG, and later Apex Legends top out for this genre. They all take their inspiration from a mod in Arma 2 called DayZ, which is actually modded again. The interesting part is that the original DayZ mod is an open world survival mod. And this is where a lot of other survival based games kind of got their start, or at least their concept. But players got bored with that the world was too open, and it changed it so there's less place and more fighting. So it's funny that Battle Royales came from a mod of a mod. I find that kind of amusing. It goes to show you, like, if people really like a part of a game, you can distill it down and really, like, focus on the thing they like and then make a game solely with it. This takes us to Arma 2, which is a unique tactical FPS, but still built on standard FPS mechanics. The origin of all FPS mechanics start with the original arena shooters. Let's take a look at the difference from the original shooter to the modern battle royale. We see the addition of teammates, decision-based mechanics such as building, abilities, and randomized loot and equipment. We also see the map start large, but growing smaller and smaller into an arena. An interesting observation is that some of the high-level players in these games will complain about getting attacked by a third party, and want to fight each team alone, which would just be Team Deathmatch, a common mode in all FPS games. It really shows the history of where these games come from. So as you walk back on, like, where FPS gaming came from, and you just kind of see where it was, and I find it incredibly ironic and just... You see these new games and kids play it, and they're like, you know what should change about this game? Fuck these multiple teams. It should just be 3 people against 3 people in an arena. And I'm just like, that's what I played in the 90s. And so it kind of comes full circle. Everything always comes full circle. So while we get into team-based games, I think in the next decade, we're going to see single-player games start making a big impact in the market. So, well, FPSs turned into battle royales. They also broke off into team shooters. So FPSs kind of went this way, and they kind of went whoop, and they kind of went into 2 different genres. One was battle royale, and the other is team-based shooters. And while I'm casting a wide net here, Overwatch, Valorant, and Counter-Strike are leaders in this game. I know people are going to be like, there's a lot of differences with those games. I understand, but that's why I'm casting a wide net. It's still based on some fundamental stuff. At least conceptually. These games are a lot easier to trace, as almost every FPS game back in the day had its team-based modes or mods that added abilities. Most FPSs had a Team Deathmatch and a CTF mode, or mods like the original Team Fortress in Half-Life or Rocket Arena in Quake. Again, we see a common thread. The newer games have a focus on teammates, abilities, and decision-making. We also see the move towards round-based games or an asymmetric mode like offense versus defense, which further helps simplifying a game. So, again, back to Artos' thing. Oh, people play other games because they're simpler and easier. well, that's what people want. As soon as I start dividing roles, like even just Overwatch having support, damage, and tank, understand that's easier than having no roles. Not even from a balance side, just from a player coming into the game and they're like, I have so many options, what do I do? And I'm like, you only have 2 options. And they're like, okay, I can do that. I can pick one of the 2. That's easier to do. So simplifying the game really gets more people into the genre, which as we go longer and longer, right now in society, um, games are becoming more and more accepted, right? And as more and more people play games, the truth is I think most of the hardcore gamers are already on board, right? I don't see someone coming off the street that's never played games before and just goes straight into grinding WoW and shit like that. Maybe that happens, but not that very often. So right now, you're trying to cast a really wide net on your market, and making the game simpler, not easier, but simpler, is a very quick and easy way to do it. And again, breaking things into offense and defense, roles, classes, heroes, stuff like that make things easier. To learn where gaming is going, we have to know where it's been. And now that we've discussed that, we can pick out some trends. Most genres are moving in a direction that's more about accessibility and evening the playing field with new players and vets through simpler game mechanics. From the RTS genre, we're seeing it move away from controlling hundreds of units while building a base to controlling a single unit with no building at all. In FPS games, we see less reliance on aiming with the introduction of abilities and simplifying combat with objective-based play, so offense versus defense. Another genre that has done this, but we haven't talked about it, are fighting games. They are making some changes with simpler combos, larger timing windows, and comeback mechanics. More than anything is the transition to team-based play across the board. Now, they haven't done that in fighting games, but I believe Wednesday night fights or Thursday night fights is a big community thing for the fighting game community, and those are usually team-based stuff, where, there's 3 players from each team, and you kind of do 3 1v1s. The change to more social is twofold. Humans are social creatures, and our video games experiences are no different than any other. We enjoy playing games and spending time with others. Not only does it lower the stress of playing, but by sharing a loss, it also provides simplification of the game through siloing. So this is what I was talking about, siloing with roles. Now there's the support role. You only gotta do a couple things. Oh, there's the damage role. Just worry about shooting people, right? It makes the game simpler through the siloing. People will almost always start to fall into these specific roles, both in life and gaming. So this kind of this is a very quick touch and callback to personality types really do affect how they play and what they play in the game. And you'll often see people, I was talking to my buddy about this, and he's like, back when he worked at a larger company, he worked with this one project manager, and he's like, you play WoW? And the guy's like, yeah. And he's like, you're a priest. And the guy's like, how the fuck do you know? And he's like, I can tell how you manage projects and how you work as an associate. These are your personality traits, and this is what you would probably enjoy in a game. And that's true. Personality does come out in the game. So people's personalities, if you need to allow them to be optional in the game so they can explore them. And they will usually silo themselves, which is, it kind of just happens. Humans, we tend to be specialists. This is what we do, which is how things always happen. Highly based on our personality. This allows them to specialize and quickly gain skill and stay interested and relevant. MMOs use this mechanic with the holy trinity of tank, healer, and damage. The big question is, aren't all of these changes a good thing? Most of the time, yes. But really the answer is up to you. As far as the market is concerned, yes, all of these changes have led to more profitable games. The communities on average seem to be pleased with each of their respective games as well. One issue is that it's very difficult to tell if games are becoming more accessible or more people are just playing video games. My best guess is that it's a little bit of both, specifically with quarantine keeping more people indoors. This brings us back to our initial talk on motivation and why we play games. Remember that the in-depth study only had 2 categories for competitive players. The rest is about game mechanics and making the game enjoyable. That's what it's really all about. And I can tell you from personal experience that while I love competitive and challenging sides of Overwatch, there are days that I can't bring myself to play. This has never been more true than this year with COVID-19. I was having a very stressful fall of 2020, and multiple nights I'd sit down at my computer and ask if I wanted to play Overwatch. The answer was an overwhelming no. Why would I want to play a game that would add more stress to my life? All the game has is a competitive mode, but it is not enough to carry it during hard times. This is a... I talked to Moon Moon at TwitchCon in 2018 or 2017. I forget when. But wait, was it Moon Moon? No, it was Tim the Tatman. Sorry, it was Tim the Tatman. And I was just joking around with him, and I was like, "Oh yeah, man." I was like, "You hated me when I played Junkrat, and one of my buddies spammed my channel and your channel." And I'm like, "Dude, the cancerous people from your chat came over." And he's like, "I'm sorry." He's like, "I can't do anything about that." I'm like, "No." I'm like, "No, I get you. I'm like, it actually helped me. That was my first day of streaming." But like, everyone's giving me shit, and I'm used to it. I'm like, "Don't worry about it." But I just want to say like, thanks, because while it seems like a bad thing, that it really helped me get viewership early on. And I'm like, but it's Overwatch. Everyone's angry at each other. I'm like, but what, why did you stop playing Overwatch? And he's like, oh, one day I was just like really angry, and my wife asked what's wrong, and he's like, I don't know, I just played Overwatch, and he realized Overwatch was like actually fucking up how he felt in life. I basically the same thing. This last fall, when I was really, really busy at work and I was taking a lot of days off from streaming, when I'm stressed, I don't want to sit down and play this game. Like, really, this is a shit game to play when you're stressed. It does not relieve anything. It's like, I like the competition. Competition for me is very enjoyable. I don't know how many people know me that well here, but like, yes, I'm a martial artist. Yes, I fight. I enjoy that competition immensely. But I also always used to play intramural and a bunch of sports as a child, and just I've always been active and competitive my entire life. So competitive to me does a lot of things. It really does help me. But when I'm stressed in real life and I sit down, I'm like, do I really want to play a game against double sniper, double shield the entire fucking time? Even if I don't play Junkrat, I'm just playing the same fucking thing over and over and over by going up against double shield, double sniper. And Blizzard has no fucking really incentive to fix this. Like, they're just like, oh, whatever, fuck you. I'm like, no, I don't want to get stressed out and play this. Understand that people are stressed, and if you have a difficult game and you're not like, people suck, that's why they can't play my game. It's not difficult. Well, it is a little difficult, but they just suck. Like what Artosis was saying, like they just want to play easier games. Well, yeah, because the basic fucking person, your average user, just wants to have fun and enjoy it. A lot of people enjoy RPGs and like losing themselves in the game. And if you have a competitive environment, there's really nothing to get lost inside of. You're just playing the game, and when it's done, you kind of break out of it. And you're like, oh yeah, great. But I believe this is the single biggest reason in today's gaming trends: teams. As I mentioned earlier, that's what nearly every game genre has moved to, and the big reason why is because of ladder anxiety. Ladder anxiety is a big issue in single-player competitive games, where all the responsibility falls on you. First-person shooters, RTSs, and fighting games are all classically designed as 1v1, but there are very few, if any, single-player competitive games that do it well in modern times. The fighting genre hasn't had much evolution in its gameplay, right? Fighting games are always 1v1. DBZ kind of added some of the team stuff in. Really hasn't taken off too well, but like Street Fighter, even though I hate it, Marvel vs. Capcom, Mortal Kombat, all those fighting games, like they're still somewhat popular, especially Street Fighter, especially the tournaments for that. Fucking great. I love watching those. I don't play fighting games, but I love watching Street Fighter. Overall, from the start, not much innovation. But, while fighting games are well known, it has always been on the lower side of popularity. There are only a couple of FPS arena shooters still attempting to make it in today's market. Quake Champions and Diabolical. I always get that. I always want to say Diabolical. These are good games, but they have a tiny player base compared to other FPSs. Lastly, the RTS genre have no modern games left. The last one standing was StarCraft 2, but Blizzard has stopped support for that game last year. While with its support slowing down, many players are moving back to StarCraft Brood War. The only other RTS still standing is Age of Empires 2, which is another RTS from the 90s. It really shows how long a game can last with a proper competitive scene, even while having a fraction of its original player base. So, teams are becoming a really big deal in every single game genre. And I personally think it's for the better. I enjoy team games a lot more than just kind of solo 1v1 games. Now, while I do play Overwatch and I flank like a son of a bitch, I do take a lot of 1v1s in that game, but I don't know. There's still, I enjoy that there's more to it than that. If I was just playing a 1v1 game, I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much. But all these games, most games classically, are all 1v1, and that's actually the biggest reason a lot of them aren't played these days. That's why a lot of the classics aren't really played, is because it's 1v1. The kicker to competitive-based games is that there's a skill wall and entry after release. One reason why high-skill games have low population is that unless the new player is ready to lose for a long period of time, they will often quit before getting skilled enough to enjoy it. Modern games need a proper tutorial and queue system to onboard new players in an enjoyable way. Without this, new blood will not find its way back into the community very easily. Think about someone just picking up Overwatch for the first time now. How much of an edge you people in my chat would have on them. Just from playing the game, and it doesn't matter if you're, bronze or GM or whatnot, just the edge you have on them. Now, I came into Overwatch with 20 years of FPS experience, which is why I got top 100 right away. Not a big fucking deal. It's just 20 years of experience paying off. It's very difficult for new players to step into these very competitive games. Overwatch has, the queue system, which will put you in the lower ranks so you can play against people your skill level. Other games do not. Other games, you're just going to sit there and get your ass beat for months until you get good enough. And that takes a lot of drive and a lot of motivation. Very few people can actually do that. Props to them if they do, but at the same time, if they don't, there's other things you can be doing with your life, right? Which takes us all the way back to Artos' comment. Are new games just easier than the old ones? And that's why it's harder to get players into traditional genres like StarCraft 2 or Quake Champions. New games are simpler, but they are just designed this way because that's how communities modded old games to enjoy them more. It's how each genre has evolved into something new to stay relevant in the current market. The switch to team-based play has made games simpler by allowing players to focus on a single aspect and sharing the burden of a loss or the success of a win. Cannot be underestimated sharing the burden of a loss. Even if the burden of the loss is in the form of, my team blows, I'm great, let's play again. It's better than, for the game and the developers, it's better than saying, man, I suck at this game, I'm not going to play. As bad as that is, that's the truth. This is all happening while being social and in the company of friends. Both of these ideas lower the amount of stress on the player and makes the game enjoyable even when losing. So do people not play a classic RTS game like StarCraft 2 because it's difficult? Yes. The initial skill needed to play turns people away, and doubly so because it's an inherently stressful 1v1 ladder. It's extremely difficult to climb that first hill and keep climbing it every time you want to play. People play games to have fun, and while we have many definitions of fun, if your game can't be fun while getting better, why would anyone pick up that game over another with today's choices? The truth is that the other aspects of these challenging games do not make up for the stress or time needed to put in. The last thing the player base needs to do is to take a superior stance and say that people just can't handle the game, even while true, it doesn't attract new players. Difficulty should be marketed as pride for accomplishing the journey and refining your ability to learn and grow as a person. Sounds a lot nicer than talking down to others. This is basically Artos' comments people don't play these games because they're fucking they only play easy games. They don't play difficult games like this. Yeah, it's true, but just be word it different. And so while I agree that StarCraft 2 is difficult, and it's the main reason why people don't play it, it doesn't mean other games are easier. Simple and easy are two different topics that many confuse. Easy means to accomplish without effort. Simple means it can be understood. As a martial artist, I can tell you firsthand that while boxing is simpler than other styles, it doesn't make it less effective, nor does it make it easier. I can tell you this firsthand, because boxers will definitely whoop my ass. Right? If you want to fuck with Mike Tyson when he was 19 or 20 years old, he would just kill you. Doesn't matter if it's simpler or not, it works. Gaming companies favor simplicity because it is easy to pick up but can be hard to master. This is the key to what makes some games extremely popular. With a low entry level, players can enjoy the base game by themselves or with friends. Eventually, as players get bored of that, they can move on to the competitive modes and play the game long term. On the other hand, I would consider StarCraft 2 or any classic FPS RTS the opposite. It's hard to pick up and even harder to master. That's why we've seen classic ideas go away and give a rise to simpler mechanics. While I love watching Brood War today, and I'm excited every time to see their immensely skilled players face off, I will probably never play StarCraft or StarCraft 2 again. There's too low of an enjoyment for me in the classic genre besides the pride I would get in my own skill. Problem being is that I can do other things I enjoy more and still take pride in that skill. Okay, so Ripfans brings up a good point before I finish this off. StarCraft 2 co-op is fun and very accessible. Yes. StarCraft 2 co-op, while many people don't know it, and maybe more people do than I lead on, that mode, that entire concept, I think saved the game for like 4 years. SC2 co-op is actually pretty damn fun. I played a little bit myself, and if I played StarCraft 2 again, it would be that mode. One, because I can enjoy it with friends. Two, it's low stress, it's PvE, but like you get to pick a very unique way of playing, and you can fuck around a lot. And it's sad that they stopped supporting. That's correct. I want to end this with some hope for the older 1v1 style games, specifically the RTS genre and how it's going to move forward. With everyone enjoying simpler games, does that mean the old complex games are going away? No. Like everything, we have cycles, and right now we're in a low stakes cycle that has been driven extremely hard by COVID-19 and the overall stress in everyone's life. That cycle will come back when players want to play hard games, but they still need to innovate the genre. For older genres to make a comeback, it needs to be hidden well within modern mechanics that cater to casuals and low stress. All games will need a low stakes mode. A good example of this is League of Legends all random all mid mode. No one takes it seriously, but in a good way. No one takes it seriously, but is a good way to still use some of the same mechanics in a risk-free environment. Another cornerstone of getting non-competitive players on board is lore. Overwatch has shown us the degree players will go to play the hero they love and identify with. Build an environment and reason for players to play your game after a hard day's work so they can get lost in it. Of course, there needs to be modding and map creation for the player base. While microtransactions can fund the game for a bit, the amount of intelligence at one studio will never compare to what the community can come up with and produce. I feel as if Frost Giant has all the old genres on its back right now, which should worry us, but then I remember it's made up of members from the old Blizzard team, and I start to believe. Viewership of Age of Empires 2, Heroes of Might and Magic 3, and StarCraft Brood War have shown me that people still love these classic games, and that our younger generations are starting to discover these gems. Taking classic games as the competitive mode while building a low-stakes PvE or PvP environment and wrapping it within a modern infrastructure seems to be the way forward. That's it. That's kind of my thing. How does this pertain to Overwatch, since most of my viewers are Overwatch viewers and want to know about that game? There's been a lot of talk about balance recently, and one of the ideas I saw, people are like, that's a great idea, is like, they're like, oh, there's no more armor in the game, but if you ever take more than 100 damage at one point in time, you activate an armor deal where you start taking like 25% less damage, and different tanks get different amounts of these like triggers. And I'm like, that is such an obscure and complex mechanic, it would never work. Now, it's Blizzard, so they could make it work and people would play it. But if you got into an FPS, that would seem so unnatural and confusing that no one would really get it. And I'm like, you guys have to hold on to Overwatch's core ideas, which is like simplicity, accessibility, these types of things. So when we start looking at what we need to do in Overwatch and how to make it go forward and how to balance it, you have to adhere to some old rules, and basically the old rules are what the rules Overwatch was built on, which is actually my next blog post, which is going to be a fucking doozy, buddy. It's a lot. It's going to be a lot. But if no one has any questions, I can end it here. Yeah, I'll put this up on YouTube, and I'll see what they say. Usually people are just like, fuck you, Chro, I'm not going to watch this. Thank you for your comment. Um, Potato says, how does this apply to single-player games since you mentioned them earlier? Um, how does this apply to single-player games? Um, so the thing about single-player games is you still want to adhere to these types of motivations, and you don't have to adhere to this one specifically, but just have some idea of motivations and what you're doing and why you're doing. Um, single player games I still think fall on the same token where it's just like don't make your game difficult for the sake of being difficult. And don't just add PvP or PvE just because it needs to be there. You need to have some context around it and it needs to build the story of the game. If you have a game and it doesn't need PvP, then don't fucking do it. Don't even think about it. Um that would be my main thing to take away from it. I guess the ending is kind of linked to um single player games or just PvE. Um, Basically, build the lore up, make people get lost in your game. Make sure it's low stress, and even if it is supposed to be difficult, make sure there's some type of basically easy way out. I don't want to say it like that, but basically that like RimWorld, you can play builder only, or you can make it very simple, and you can make it like less killy towards you. Like there's ways to play the game that aren't just fucking like, oh shit, this guy's dying. Oh, this guy went crazy. Oh, this thing shot me now. Like, just be reasonable with it. Could we track back how single player games are created? Yeah, we could. I mean, you could apply this logic to a single player game like Breath of the Wild. I'm just pulling this out of my ass. So like Breath of the Wild, and you can see where that came from. I mean, you're like, all right, it's very open world. They decimated dungeons. They just made these very simple things and spread it out through the world so you could explore. Like they went really, really low stakes, and they're just like, let's just someone be in the game and just enjoy it, and not just be like, all right, where's the first dungeon? Fuck them up. Where's the second dungeon? Fuck that one up. You know what I mean? Um, yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, but I the way it relates to single player games, I would just walk the same path and try to see where it came from. Understand that difficulty, while it can attract specific people, it's going to be a lower market share. So give people a way out of that or a way to turn it up. Social solo games, Path of Exile. Okay, that's yes. I guess that's how the ARPGs has gone, but I haven't looked too much into that, so I can't speak on it too much. Weird ass PvP and Doom Eternal. Yeah, also PvP and Doom Eternal added that terrible rootkit. They should have just not even added PvE or PvP. Sorry, that Doom is a fucking amazing game. PvE. Marcus Late says I came here very late, if possible. I just now wondering since you mentioned 1v1 games. Does this mean that fighting games are in a sense doomed to not gain popularity as a game like Overwatch unless some huge names plus the simplistic manners as Smash? Yes. I call out fighting games a little bit because fighting games have not innovated at all in like 20 years. They haven't. More or less, they're the same. Sure, there's some easier mechanics. Sure, they made things more accessible. That's about it. It's always been 1v1 doing stuff. Yeah. Also, fighting games... I forget who said it, but they're like, I don't want to play fighting games because it feels like it's a goddamn test, and I have to memorize all these equations. When I play a video game, I don't want to do that. I understand. That's kind of my sentiments on it. I had a friend suggesting when AO2 Definitive Edition came out, they should have made campaigns, the casual stuff, paid, and PvP free. That's weird because PvP is the entire thing that's alive on the game. I think you don't need to split it up. I think Overwatch, because it's PvP now, they designed their game for PvP only. That you have to allow the people that bought it in, and the best way to monetize that is to make PvE the paid content. Might want to take yourself out of Overwatch. You can hear the Overwatch sounds in the background, and this blog is technically about Overwatch. But thank you, Scoops. But that's it. That's all I got. So if you have any questions, comments, feedback, concerns, complaints, what else do you have? I don't know what other things people got. Happy moments. Throw it in feedback or in my Discord. And I'll try to get to it. But yeah, I'll post this on YouTube, and that's about it.